Alrighty, we're going to try this again. Open Blender. I'm going to close this screen out. And we have this cube and it's selected. If it's not selected, you would left click on it. I right click on it because I have my control set backwards like more normal programs. I'm going to push delete. Ask me if I want to delete. Yes, delete the cube. I want to push 7 so we can get our field flat. Okay, let's make our window a little bigger. You go to the top window and go full screen on this top window. It gives you this picture here. Okay, come down to add. That's right next to object and object mode. We're going to add an empty. Come right down to image. Click on image. We're going to come over here. You pull this out far enough, you see this little camera and different little icons. There's a chain link. There's a little one with the 3 legs. Click on that. It gives us a thing that says image and it's called an empty. And then we click on open. And in my case, I stored these pictures actually right on the desktop. So I just opened the picture I want to use for the reference. We're going to press S and we're going to scale this up to right about there. I want to press G for grab, X for the x-axis. I'll stick it right there. And we're going to scale it a little bit more. Grab X. Scale. I actually want to scale it just about. If you really want to get to the nitty gritty, you can come down here like this. You can actually zoom in. Oops. If you notice, grab X. And that ought to be about close enough. I just basically wanted to fit this grid. Since the corner of it's selected here, it will scale this direction. It's not going to scale it on both sides. It'll just scale it one direction. So if I hit the S again, and I can drag this up to that line, and left click it, and then I have this scaled, and then what I want to do now is I want to grab it. And whoopsie. Now if you make a mistake like this, you got it off center, you're messed up, that's not where you want it. You just right click your mouse button and it puts it right back. So I can go grab again, and then I hit Y. I want to move it along the Y axis to just about right there. I want to put the body of this plane more or less in the center. I don't want to put the floats in the center. But I'm actually going to put the body there now. If you'll notice, this plane's actually tilted in this drawing. So another thing we can do is we can leave it like this for the moment. Or we can push R, and then we can rotate it, but then we have to basically use our eyeballs to try to kind of guess where the airplane is more or less pointing along the lines there. One of the ways to do this, I'm going to right click and put it back. We actually push 1 on our number pad. That actually takes us to the side view. And 7 is the top view, 1 is the side view. So one of the problems we have with this, now if we push 3, that's our front view. So what we want to do is we want to rotate this. We push R, and then we push Y, and then we push, actually we don't want to rotate it on the Y. So if we right click it, it'll deselect it back. So it's still selected. We want to rotate it. We want to rotate it on the x-axis, which is actually pointing towards us. And then we want to rotate it. Let's try -90. Oops, that didn't work. So we go Alt-Z, takes it back, right click on it, and then we'll try this again. We want to go rotate 90. Wait a minute, I thought we didn't do that. Oh. Alt-Z, so we want to go negative. We want to go rotate -90. There we go. And then we'll right click. Whoopsie, that screwed it up. Rotate -90. Now left click. There we go. And we're in perspective view. That's why it looks like you're looking kind of like from the distance. If we actually we want to change this to orthoscopic view instead of perspective view. So we hit the number 5. And then you'll see the picture's perfectly aligned with this. Now if you click on your mouse button and rotate it, you can see that it is sideways. So let's go 3 again, which is your front, 1, which is your side view. Okay, and to draw for the CDK, we actually want to draw this pointing this direction. We want the nose pointing towards your positive X. I think I'll recheck it. If we need to switch it around, we can do that. It's not a problem. If we push 7, we have this picture from the top. And again, if you take the mouse wheel and we move it just a little bit, what we can do here is we can actually drag this along the Y axis, and we can put it to the back of this grid, or even further back. Okay, now let's look at 1. Still looks the same as 1. No matter how far back you move this, it'll look the same as 1. Now if you push 7 though, you notice it's way back out of the picture. It's out of your grid space, which is fine because we're just using this as a reference. We'll go back to 1. We have our side picture. Now if we, sometimes it's easier to work at angles like this, we can come back here. We push the A to deselect this picture. That way we don't have an object selected. Come back down to add. And we're going to add an empty again. And some people use the plane axis, then they add the picture, but I just go straight to the image. Click on image. Click on open. And we want to go, I want to go to desktop because that's where I got my pictures at. You have to find where your file's at. And this time, instead of opening 1, we're going to open 2. Open image. Alrighty, now if I go 7 again, I can zoom in a little bit, and if I turn it a little bit sideways, we can do the same thing here. We can scale. Scale. Now one way to make this a little bit easier, 7. You notice if you do this, you get the full grid. Let's try perspective mode again. If you push 5, it takes you to perspective, and it only shows you your square grid. But you want to be perfectly lined up if you're scaling something, because if you're scaling it and you're off center, it'll start getting goofy. But what we want to do with this anyway, so that it jives with this picture, is we want to rotate it while it's flat. So let's try a rotate. Let's try -90. And that's the wrong direction. So let's go negative. There we go. Just hit the negative key and turns it around where you want it. Okay. Click A. Now we're going to grab it. on the x-axis, and we're going to bring it here, and we're going to come down here a little bit like we did before, and we're going to see if we can put it pretty much right on that white line. Grab it, X. Alrighty, got it on that line. Okay, now what I want to do now is I want to grab it along the y-axis, and I want to bring it up to this corner here. Okay, now let's scale, and let's bring this all the way to that line right there. Okay, now I don't know if that mates exactly, but it should be pretty close. So when we hit our 1, we should see the side. We should hit our 7, we should see the top. Now this is perspective again, so if I hit 5, it'll flatten it out. And orthoscopic. The only difference now is that in orthoscopic, if we hit 7, we have the whole grid line here. So what we want to do now, since we have the whole grid line here, is we go 1, which is your side view. We still have the bottom picture selected. We go grab, and we're going to actually move it on the z-axis, and we're going to move it down. We're going to move it underneath our airplane, because our airplane is going to be in the center of this picture, where this life buoy is. So now, if you scale it, it's way underneath. See that? But we had a 7. The grid's actually above the picture, and we have our little life buoy. So what we want to do now is we want to grab this picture, and we want to go along the y-axis, and we want to center it as center as we can get it. So you want your tail pointing on this red line if possible, and you want your propeller in your front doing this. Now if you notice, this picture isn't perfectly centered. It's pretty close, but it's not perfectly centered in the picture to where it's really running down the axis. But I think it's pretty close. So if you wanted, you could play with this a little bit. You could actually rotate, push your rotate, and then just move it just ever so slightly, about like that. I think that's pretty close. I think that red line is, I still might be rotating it more about like that. I think that's pretty close. Okay. Now a trick you can use, we'll go back to 1. You go grab on the z-axis, and you put this thing back up into the center here. Or you actually bring it up basically to this level right here. Now as you'll notice, this airplane on the side that we discussed before is not centered either. So now if you would left click on this picture, I right click on it to select it, so I don't move my center buoy or my center point. Now what I want to do now, so I'm going to hit R for rotate, and I want to rotate this, and then I'm going to grab it on the z-axis, and I'm going to bring it down. I want to run this line. You can see the black line from my other picture. I want to run that line to where it basically runs through this airplane body, and that's not too bad, but I still need to rotate it. Hit R. Still need to rotate it just a little bit more. And you can see actually the way this airplane body is built, it's kind of interesting because it doesn't, some airplanes that build actual in a geometric way to where it more or less the body's centered, and this is pretty close. That's pretty close. So I think we'll go with there. Now, what you can do is we can take this. We can also grab it, push G. Some people like the arrows. I like to use the keys. And then if we push Y, it'll constrict it to the Y thing, and then we bring it right here. And then that way we can compare. Click A. We can actually compare if this thing's lining up, and if it's scaled, as you note, it doesn't seem to be lining up real great. Let's grab it on the Y-axis. Bring it a little bit more, like about there. Now what I can do, what will help, is I can grab it on the X-axis. And as you can see, that's pretty close to being mated up right there. Pretty close. And these might not be perfect. Right click, dang it. Anyway, that's pretty close to being mated. So those pictures are actually fairly in the same scale, which is good, because if they're not in the same scale, then we would have to scale. We would have to scale this. We would have to scale either the side picture or the top picture so that it made it up. Now some people actually draw this way, and they actually draw with these pictures like this. I don't like that. I find that somewhat confusing. So again, I'm going to hit my 1, and since I have my bottom picture selected, and you can tell because it's yellow, hit 1. And we're going to grab that, or like I said, you can grab the Z marker if you go like this, and you can actually just grab it with your mouse, your cursor, and drag it down. That's what I don't like about that, though, is it? Okay, and then if I right click, no, that ain't, I hit A. I need to hit A to deselect. There we go. Now the same thing with this is I right click on this top picture, which you would left click unless you change your settings, and I'll show you how to do that in a little bit. If you don't know how to do that, I'll show you how to do that. And the reason it's kind of good to get into this mode where you change your settings to where you use your right mouse button to select and your left to grab stuff, or for your cursor, is because that's the way Autodesk and almost every other program set up. Okay, again, you can left click on this green little arrow marker here and you can pull it, or you can push G and then you can push Y. Now I need to hit A to deselect that. And as you notice, I have your profile picture off to the left and the top picture is to the bottom. Okay, and we're going to put it on 7 again. Now I had some model pictures I was going to use for this, but the problem with the model pictures is that the side picture and window did not match the top. The top, they actually had the window, the front of the window up here. They actually had the whole window offset, and it screwed the whole picture up for drawing references, more or less. Other than the bottom, I plan on using the bottom picture. We can import that in later when we have to do work on the wings to put the when we go to the bottom of the wing. And actually on the wing you can actually see, I think these are the control actuators that go into the wing, and you can kind of see, I think you see one of the hinge points, none of the other hinge points. Settle down, Foofers, quit. It's my dog. I have a Chihuahua. He likes the cats. Okay, one of the other things I do, you don't have to do this, but I find it helpful, is you have this little thing that's actually a sun, and it's a light source for if you're going to render the picture. And we're not worrying about rendering it right now, so I right clicked on that to select it, and then I'm going to push delete, and then I'm going to say yes. And then the same with this camera. Now see, I left clicked on it. I left clicked on that camera, and it moved my it moved my center cursor. Okay, now I'm going to delete the camera. Now, I'm kind of in a habit of doing this because I do this a lot. Since I moved my cursor, the importance of this is if you add another object, it's going to come in right here. If I add an object, that's where it's going to spawn, is where this cursor is. So, if we hit Shift-C, it recenters my cursor. Now, I don't know what scale actually I'm drawing this in. I draw in metrics, and then each one of these cubes, I think, is a meter. And so, a lot of times when I'm drawing ships or airplanes, sometimes I draw them in scale to start with. And one of the beautiful things about this program is if we draw this airplane in this scale right now, and let's say that let's say if we even blew it really big, if we drew this thing and it was actually in a sense 200 meters long, as long as you have this whole object, or you have the parent object and all of the children objects attached to it, you can select all of those, and when you scale them, they'll all scale together. So if you, I don't know the exact stats at the moment on this airplane, but I can look up the stats and I can see that this airplane is, say, 19 meters long, as for an example. Like I said, I don't know what the actual length of this aircraft is, but if this aircraft was, per se, 32 feet long, or 25 feet long, or 5.5 meters, 8 meters, you can actually scale this, and you can zoom down. You can zoom down to from the meter to the centimeter to the millimeter, and I think that's as small as it goes on the metrics. This is a millimeter, and you zoom out, and those millimeters turn into a meter or a centimeter, and then if you zoom out, those centimeters turn into a meter. Like this is a meter, and I'm pretty sure your meter is your base if you have it on metrics, that this is a meter across. So with that being said, then 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's 16 meters across here, which this is actually probably too big for the scale of this airplane. But we can, like I said, we can draw this. We can find out what the wingtip to wingtip measurement is, or the overall length. If you know they're actually measuring from the very front of the pontoons to the rear of the tail. You can take a measurement, and then as long as this is drawn in scale and you have everything selected, you can scale it to the appropriate size. And I think we're going to leave this video about there. The other thing what we want to do is we want to come up to File, and we want to click Save As, or you can click Save, and you'll notice it says Untitled Blend. And I'm going to double click that. You want your dot blend to stay there. If you actually think if you even erased the whole thing, it'll put the dot blend on it. So let's put E14Y dash capital Glen, and then we're going to put 1 dash alpha, and this is we're going to save that. And it'll say save as a blend file, so that's why I see it put the dot blend on there. So we're going to click save, and now we have this. So if I actually quit Blender and then click right back on it, and then actually it's in the screen. Whatever you worked recently on, they usually have it in the screen. If not, then you have to go dig it out. But see, if I click right back on, and it saved it right where I had it. I actually had it in an angle. So, and just like in games, you want to save this thing a lot. Save it a lot, save it a lot, save it a lot, that kind of thing. The more you save it, then the better off you are. And then not only that, save it in different stages. And then if you're drawing on it and you figured out you made a really big mistake, then it's real easy to just go back to a real recent copy and then fix it, instead of trying to have to redraw the whole thing. So if I save it here again, save as, and it's already actually, since I saved it, it's already saved it the thing. So I just save it again. And then, like I said, if I come back in here, click on this, it comes back to right where I had it. So whatever angle or drawing you had it at, that's how that works. And let's make that an end to this video, and I'll see you in the next video, and maybe we can start the drawing.